Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Stayntouch Product Enhancements, version 5.95, add-on groups, enhanced purpose of stay functionality, and more, presented by Stayntouch implementation consultant, Julia Josephson. I'm your host, Erin Fisher, the content writer here at Stayntouch. Today's presentation will cover how you can get the most out of the Stayntouch PMS version 5.95 project release. In this webinar, we will cover the following enhancements. Summary view now available with comparison scheduled report, attaching add-on groups during reservation creation on the stay card and on the group, the option to print the group confirmation, and then in pilot, we have additional digital registration card enhancements. We also have new purpose of stay enhancements, item inventory by day from the availability screen. Another pilot item is the billing address for Stayntouch Guest Mobility. We also have enhancements to the deposit invoice functionality, as well as Stayntouch Pay and add-in enhancements, including authorization with amount via terminal and tipping via terminal. And lastly, for multi-property configuration, the currency amount has been added to promotions. We'll have a short Q&A session at the end of the presentation, so feel free to submit questions throughout the presentation, and we'll answer them in the order they're received at the end. And that's all I have. I'm going to pass it over to Julia.
Thanks, Erin. All right. Okay, thanks everybody for joining. We're going to start with the default dashboard setting for the search. When we released the new dashboard a while back, this changed basically from defaulting to contains to starts with. And I'm sure a lot of you have adapted to that, but we had some requests for the ability to sort of revert the search back to contains, which is particularly helpful if you have a lot of international guests with multiple names that are a little hard to track down since they're, if the names aren't always coming through the way they think they came through, particularly via travel agent or OTA. So you can change this default from starts with to contains by now navigating to the backend settings. And under the hotel and staff section, there's a new tile called dashboard. And you can change the dashboard search default here from starts with to contains. And to apply that change, you have to click the green Save Changes button. And now for all users moving forward on your property, the dashboard will default to contains instead of starts with. Next, we we added a new feature to the way you can schedule comparison reports. So if we go to schedule the comparison report via reports and schedule a report/export, when I go to create a new report schedule or update an existing one for comparison, under options, you'll now see here that there's an option to select summary view. If I select summary view and have it sent to myself, which I did earlier so that we could take a look, the way that it will send to me is not with all charge groups broken out underneath each charge group. It instead will summarize the totals for the charge group and not give you the details of each charge code. This change, I pulled this one on PDF, but this change applies to also the CSV, JSON, and text formats of this report. All right. Next, we have a cool new feature called add-on groups. And if you go into the backend settings, into rates, there's now a new tile here called add-on groups. And you can configure add-on groups here. The concept here is that you can create sort of multi-enhancement containing packages and then very quickly add them to a reservation or a group. So if I click add new, maybe I do a park and dine package. We can select the currency if you've got multi-currency enabled. If you don't, it'll just default to your property's currency. Once I select the currency or it's defaulted, you see a list of my available add-ons here. And let's see, I've got a discounted parking allowance that I want to add and a dinner package allowance. Um, and maybe, maybe I'm also doing like a late checkout. All right. So then I save changes and that add-on group now exists. You can see I have another one here too. And when I go to make a reservation or update a reservation or um, add add-ons to a group block, it's going to display, and I'll show you that here. So if I go to create a new reservation, you can see here now I've got this new section under bestseller on the left-hand side for add-on groups when I get to this enhanced stay screen. And if I click on add-on groups, you can see my two options here. We have the little orange chevron that indicates you can expand down and see more information. So if I expand out Park and Dine, it shows me the three enhancements that are part of that package, the cost for each, and then obviously it's giving me this total here for the stay. Um, can choose to bundle with price for add-on groups if you want to. But the concept here is that it's very easy to say, let's add all of these at one time without having to go through and add them all individually. So if I add this to the reservation, you can see it here. You can remove an add-on group from a reservation just like a normal add-on, and you can expand it here to see a little more detail. What you can't do is remove um, specific singular items from the group. So if let's say they wanted this Park and Dine package, but they didn't want the late checkout and didn't want to pay for it, I can't just remove that. I would have to remove this Park and Dine package overall and then add those two enhancements that they want on their own individually. But you can remove it with that red X and remove it from the reservation. Similarly to the create reservation screen, if you have an existing reservation, you can click on add-ons in the stay card and add more to this room. And we've got that same add-on groups option here. Um, and we can bundle if we want to and add, and that's added that to the reservation. Finally, we can add it to a group block. I've pulled up a group block here, this Jones and Harris wedding. And if I come to add-on groups, this is a different hotel, so it's different add-on groups, but I've got this romance package option, which is adding 4 different add-ons at once, and I can just very quickly add that to the group block, which will add it to all reservations within the group block. All right. Our next enhancement is to group confirmations. If you pull up a group block, we already have, and this has been here, this ability to send a confirmation. This is sort of like a group confirmation that sort of displays the rooms that are held and booked in the reservation if you want them to. We've always had this ability for you to send it. We now have this ability for you to press this orange button to print or save a copy as PDF of this email instead. So it's the same format, it just is listed here. And that's that. We have an enhancement to the digital registration card that is still in pilot. It's related to promotions and newsletter opt-ins. So if you go into the backend settings, if under hotel and staff and stationery, you can under here, you can do promotions and newsletter opt-in. You can basically add a title and a label. The title is, I'll show you, will display as sort of a clickable link, and then the label pops up in a little pop-up for the guest to read. You can assign it to the registration card print. So if I assign this existing one that I have here and save changes, it's going to show up on the digital registration card, which I'll show you. I want to also note, though, you need to have under cards and guest card fields, you need to have opt-in enabled here. So just with this green toggle on. You can set it as mandatory if you want to. Obviously, with an opt-in, to be compliant with most GDPR, that kind of thing, you typically wouldn't make opt-in mandatory, but you definitely want to have it turned on here so that it displays. Then, if those settings are in place, when we go to check in a reservation, and we have the digital registration card here, beneath the signature, if you're using it, or if not, it'll just appear at the bottom. We've got the terms and conditions, which has always been there, but now we have this promotional email opt-in thing. Um, and again, this is where you can um, click on here and see that this is that label and then the text within it. They can agree. They don't have to click on the link. They could also just click the checkbox that pops up this box, and then they can hit agree or disagree. And if they disagree, it just simply won't check it. If they agree, it does check it. A couple other enhancements we have to the digital registration card. Um, the we now have this option to skip mandatory fields. This is particularly helpful for maybe a night auditor who needs to check in a late arriving guest before night audit runs, but the guest isn't here yet, so they maybe don't have the required fields that are there. So you can skip the mandatory fields as a user, and that would allow you to proceed with check-in, assuming that you kind of just make a dummy signature. And agree to terms and conditions if you have those things required. If you don't have signature and terms and conditions set up on your registration card, it wouldn't show those, or those wouldn't be required to move forward with check-in. And then lastly, when you're adding a guest to the queue, if I say put in queue, it's going to give us an opportunity to fill in the registration card here before when you're adding them to queue. When I hit proceed to queue, it then takes us back to this normal screen where we say add to queue. Um, and this is again helpful to make sure that guests are maximizing their time at the front desk when they come back to check in once their room is ready. Um, as a note, any mandatory fields that are not completed when you're adding them to the queue will still be mandatory when you're checking the guest in. So you would see that digital registration card again, prompting you to enter those mandatory fields. We next have some enhancements to the purpose of stay functionality that we introduced a couple releases back. And under reservations and purpose of stay, we had talked about before how you could enable this. Now, under reservations and reservation settings, there is a force purpose of stay option here. If you select that, it's going to force it during the reservation creation process and the check-in process. And so I'm going to save changes there. And now you'll see when I go to create a new reservation, here we go. So another enhancement is that it will appear in the demographics pop up similar to market source, that kind of thing. So purpose of stay is there. And then I could of course click on demographics and fill them in, but a lot of users wait for that prompt when they're making the reservation. So if I, go to create the reservation, when I get this pop up with the mandatory demographics to fill in, purpose of stay is now here. So we can say what those are and save and continue. And then per usual, you would see that was updated under the additional details section under purpose of stay. If we don't have purpose of stay selected, which I think I don't on this reservation, we should get a prompt to do that here. And you can see that on this digital registration card. If you weren't doing the digital registration card, you'd see it in a separate pop-up. But that's coming here up as a mandatory field that's not filled in that I need to take care of. All right. Our next enhancement is to item inventory. Um, a lot of hotels use the item inventory to, keep track of how many cribs or rollaway beds or that kind of thing they have left to give out to guests, sort of things that you have a limited number of that you offer on a first come, first serve basis. And if we look at the item inventory for tonight and maybe the next few nights, let's say I want to add a crib to this room. Obviously, I don't have to look at the item inventory really before offering the crib because I know that when I go to add the add-on, it won't show if I don't have one available. But I wanted to show you that right now there's 5 available. When I go to the add-on and I add the crib, you guys are probably already familiar with this other enhancement we had. This is maybe a year or two ago, where you can now click on the baby crib and you can say, I only want it on Wednesday. So maybe this person has a baby joining them for Wednesday, but they're not here Tuesday and Thursday, so they don't need the baby crib for those nights. So I'm going to add it just for the Wednesday. And the enhancement that we've made here is that when you review item inventory, um, it's going to take into account the custom stay dates and date ranges that are set on the individual reservations add-on. Previously, it was just taking it for the full time, even if you had said you didn't need it the first certain nights of the stay. Once we, and that's from where we enhanced that add-on functionality. So you can see that the baby crib count decreased only for Wednesday and stayed the same for Tuesday and Thursday because they're not using it on Tuesday and Thursday. All right. Um, We also covered in a previous release webinar the new billing address functionality. Um, and we've now enhanced the guest mobility interface so that guests have the opportunity to enter a billing address on their own in the mobility check-in screen. So I pulled that up here and I went through the mobile check-in process to get to this part. But this is basically where I'm being asked to enter my address. And you can see here there's this use another address for billing that the guest themselves can select. And if I do that, um, we can, it has all of these fields. So we can do Julia. And continue. And um, those are going, so if I move forward with this and do the full mobile check-in, it's going to update those fields on the guest card and retain those while also retaining their personal address. All right. Next, there's a few things that I can't really display, but we'll talk about just to make sure everyone's clear on what that is. We have a few enhancements to deposit invoices, which are these are not used in the US. They're more used in the EU and other countries where they have legal requirements for deposit invoice functionality. Um, so if your property is using the deposit invoice functionality, payments that are made on reservations for arriving today or the current business date, they do not generate a deposit invoice anymore. They are posted to the deposit ledger and they move to the guest ledger upon check-in or no-show or cancellation, but we will not have created a deposit invoice for them. Um, we will restrict moving those payments to future reservations or changing the arrival and start date to a future date. However, date extensions and shortenings are allowed. Payments can only be moved to reservations with the same arrival date as the business date or already checked in reservations. We've also added the um, deposit invoices per legal requirements um, to fiscalization for EFSTA and for fiscal trust. And then next we have some enhancements to Stayntouch Pay. So this isn't applicable to everyone. It depends on who your payment provider, your payment gateway provider is. But if you're using Stayntouch Pay, we now support authorization via an amount via the payment terminal. And this is what that looks like. So when you go to add a credit card to a reservation via the Stay card, and credit card is selected, this is the normal frame that you see or the normal pop-up that you see. And when you select a terminal here, you now have this new section which is an amount to authorize, and you can choose to authorize a specific amount when you're adding that card. That authorization will be added to the reservation. Um, and then another thing that you can do, which is not by default enabled, you'd have to contact customer support to discuss enabling this for your property. But once this is activated, your admin will be able to configure tips with the PMS user via the Stayntouch admin portal, and the terminal will show an option to add a tip when the transaction is initiated in the PMS. For example, the PMS user initiates a payment to the EMV terminal of 50 euros or $50. And then the guest chooses to add a $1 or €1 tip via the terminal. $51 or euros would be captured at the terminal and paid by the guest, and that would be posted and reflected in Stayntouch. And then the $1 would then need to be offset manually. Either you're paying it out via cash to the employee, or maybe you're posting it as tip, non-revenue tip charge code that then is handled in some other way. And lastly, we have an enhancement to our promotions. Um, if you're in multi-property and you go to configuration and rates, under promotions, when you create a new promotion template, you have the option now to select the discount type of amount instead of just percentage like it was before. This is also the case in the PMS for a non-multi-property user when they're creating promotions. And that is all for me. So I'm going to hand back over to Erin to wrap this up. If you have any questions, of course, like she said, you can put them in the question box.
All right, thank you so much, Julia. So now I'll move over to questions. The first question is from Carla. Can you suppress the price of the group add-on?
Um, I don't I mean that you could, right? It depends on your setup, and you could maybe talk to support and see if we could look at your setup to make sure it's set up in the way that would allow you to do that. But if you're using like a group rate, you could do that. But I think but when you're normally just adding that, ultimately no, because if you're adding it at the group level, that's by default going to show the price because you're adding it to the cost of the reservation. You could use the bundle with price functionality though, Carla, and that would bundle it into the rate amount so that the guest doesn't see the breakdown.
Okay, thank you. And then another one from an anonymous user. For add-on groups, can you customize the total amount, or is it auto-created based on the price of each item in the group?
It's a great question. It is auto-created based on the price of each add-on. So let's say you have you're trying to do a romance package, and you normally sell roses for $50 and champagne for $50, but you want to offer those at a discount. You might instead create like discounted versions of those add-ons that you could use in a specific add-on group for when they're purchased together.
All right. And the next question is another one from Carla. When do you expect the digital registration card to become live for everyone? We signed up for the pilot, but haven't heard back.
Yeah, the pilot is limited to only a couple of hotels, I believe, to start, and it will as we get further along, it'll be offered to others. So you've done the right thing, offering it, or saying that you're interested in it. I know there are some more enhancements coming to it, so I think, I don't know, I don't personally have a timeline of when, but we definitely keep an eye out for more information, Carla. I would say in the next 3 to 6 months, we should have more information.
Okay, thank you. And then a question from Lake. I'm sorry if this was covered already. Is the digital registration card available on iPad? What is the suggested best practice for the guest to fill out their information and review policies before signing?
Great question. That's part of where we're still working on the enhancements. They're working on a functionality that would basically allow you to send it to the iPad, so that the guest could fill it out. There'll basically be a button that will allow you to do that. So again, keep an eye out for more enhancements. If you sign up for notifications on the announcements, you'll see when we have new release webinars and see the topics, and you can see if that's being covered. And again, you can also sign up or mark yourself as interested in the digital registration card pilot by opening a support ticket. Um, and they will let you know when we're ready to move forward with more.
Okay. And then the last question, I think I missed the timeline for add-on groups. When does this roll out? This is just rolled out with the 595 project release.
Yes, and that went out over the last week or two for all customers. So you should already have access to that functionality. If you have you must of course have the ability to go into the backend settings and into rates. That's where the add-on groups are.
And the last question is from an anonymous user. How safe is the pay by link feature?
Great question. Pay by link, I think is pretty safe because it's in the way that all credit cards entered into Stayntouch are tokenized. We don't store the credit card information in the PMS, so it is very safe. It's tokenized with the gateway, and no one can ever access that credit card number again, really. I think the only thing to think about with Pay by Link is that you're not getting the card's not present. So, if you have a lot of chargebacks, you might instead decide that you want to try to collect payments at the EMV terminal. But if you don't have a lot of chargebacks, I think, or if you typically take deposits prior to check-in, it's just the same thing as if you were using the credit card that you collected on your booking engine or something like that. It's very secure.
Okay. And that looks like the last question for now, but I'll give everyone a few more moments if you have any other questions. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions, so I will switch back to my screen. Use that. All right, so in this webinar, we covered the following enhancements: the default or the dashboard the default dashboard now can be changed to contains instead of starts with. Additionally, for the comparison scheduled report, we now have a summary view. Also, you can now attach add-on groups during reservation creation via the stay card or via group. Additionally, you can now print the group confirmation letter. And in pilot, we have additional digital registration card enhancements, as well as the billing address functionality for Stayntouch guest mobility. We've also expanded the purpose of stay functionality. You can now view item inventory by day via the availability screen. We've additionally made some deposit invoice enhancements, as well as enhancements to Stayntouch Pay and Adyen, including authorization with amount via terminal and tipping via terminal. And lastly, we covered multi-property configuration enhancements with the currency amount added to promotions. With that, I'd like to conclude our presentation. Thank you all for coming, and if you have any additional questions, feel free to email me at erin.fisher@stayintouch.com. Thanks again.